All right, so today we're diving into the Silvergate Bank situation, um, a story that on the surface seems like a pretty straightforward case of a bank going under during a crypto crash. But you've brought some interesting details to my attention that suggest a deeper story here. And we've got some excerpts from an investigative report, court documents, even a visual representation of the Signature Bank fire sale to help us unpack all this.
Yeah, and you see that simplified narrative a lot that Silvergate was a crypto bank.
Yeah.
It buckled under the pressure of the market and then voluntarily liquidated, but I think the truth is a little more complicated than that.
Okay, so walk me through this. You're saying there's more to this than just a bank failing during a rough time for crypto.
Right. Silvergate had a track record. They'd navigated difficult periods before, like the FTX collapse, for example, and come out okay.
Interesting. And we actually have something here that backs that up. An excerpt that says Silvergate was solvent, meaning they had enough to cover their debts and keep operating even with the crypto downturn happening. So if they weren't in immediate danger of going under, why the sudden decision to liquidate?
That's the big question, isn't it? And there's this theory gaining some traction called Operation Choke Point 2.0. It suggests that instead of outright bans, Biden's financial regulators, the Fed, FDIC, OCC, they opted for a softer approach, using informal pressure to squeeze crypto businesses out of the traditional banking system.
So we've got a bank that, at least on paper, looked like it was doing okay riding out the storm, and then they decide to shut down. Now we're talking about this Operation Choke Point 2.0, this idea of systematically trying to cut off crypto from traditional banking. It feels like there's a missing piece here.
And that missing piece might be the declaration filed by Elaine Hetrick. She was Silvergate's former chief administrative officer.
Okay, yeah.
And this is where things get really interesting, because we're moving away from speculation and into, hey, this is what happened.
Right, someone saying this is firsthand.
Exactly. Hetrick states in her declaration that Silvergate was facing serious pressure from regulators to distance themselves from crypto.
Like to cut ties completely, or?
Essentially, yeah. And we actually have a visual of part of that declaration.
Yep.
And the language is striking. It says, and this is a quote, "This public signaling and sudden regulatory shift made clear that at least as of the first quarter of 2023, the federal bank regulatory agencies would not tolerate banks with significant concentrations of digital asset customers, ultimately." And I think what's important is this wasn't about explicit regulations or official mandates. It was this feeling that was being conveyed.
Through different channels.
Right.
Like a subtle threat.
Exactly. It's like, we're not telling you to do it, but...
Exactly. So they felt like they had to comply, even though there weren't clear rules about it.
Yeah.
So if we think about this Operation Choke Point 2.0, what does this say about regulators and their role in encouraging or maybe discouraging innovation, especially in fintech, which is so new?
That's the question, isn't it? And to really grasp the potential impact, it helps to look at another case that played out in a very similar way. Signature Bank.
Another bank bites the dust. So tell me more about that. What happened with Signature Bank?
So like Silvergate, Signature Bank had really found a niche in the crypto space. And just like Silvergate, they suddenly found themselves in the crosshairs of regulators, which ultimately led to the bank being seized.
Wow. So another seemingly healthy institution goes under. Was it the crypto connection, or?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely suspicious. When Signature Bank's assets were sold off, there was this glaring omission, their crypto business.
And we have something here that illustrates that perfectly. A visual showing how Signature Bank was basically carved up and sold off, but their crypto operations totally left out of the deal. It's like crypto had become toxic in the eyes of regulators.
Yeah, it's an interesting parallel for sure. And it gets even more intriguing when you factor in a statement made by, get this, former Congressman Barney Frank, who was on Signature Bank's board at the time.
Wow, Barney Frank. Talk about a connection to the world of financial regulation, right?
Right. And after Signature was seized, Frank said pretty bluntly that he believed regulators were using the situation to send a message back away from crypto.
So two major institutions with ties to crypto meet a similar fate, both seemingly orchestrated by regulators. Kind of unsettling when you think about it.
Yeah. It really makes you wonder about the future of financial innovation, especially in this fast-moving world of fintech. Does this informal pressure, create a chilling effect where banks are scared to touch anything that might be considered groundbreaking technology?
Exactly. If this is how regulators react to an industry they're not comfortable with, what does that say about innovation and regulation in the digital age? Lots to think about.
For sure. And while we can't say definitively that Operation Chokepoint 2.0 is this deliberate, coordinated attempt to kill off the crypto industry, the evidence we've looked at today definitely suggests something's going on. The Silvergate case. This isn't just an isolated incident, it seems to be part of a bigger trend.
You've definitely given us a lot to digest today. We started with what seemed like a simple story about a bank failing during a downturn. But by going deeper, by looking at the evidence, asking the tough questions, we've uncovered something much more complicated. A story about potential regulatory overreach to the future of financial innovation, and how do we strike that balance between supporting growth and maintaining stability in a world that's constantly changing. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we encourage you to think about what we've discussed. Come to your own conclusions, and most importantly, keep asking those questions. Until next time, happy diving.